Hey everyone, my name is Barnyard from HalfKocked, and welcome back to my channel. And there's been a bit of a hiatus on the after credits on our mainstay show, on our flagship show. But I feel like it's time to bring it back. And for me personally, starting this off by myself, I thought, what better movie is there to do other than It Chapter 2? Oh man, it's been a long time. We've been waiting for this movie since 2017, and it's here. And man, the one thing I didn't know about this movie walking in, I did not know it was almost 3 hours long. So, It Chapter 2, it follows the same story from It Chapter 1 of 2017, whatever we're calling it these days. It follows the same group of kids 27 years later. you know, Obviously, you know the story. It's back, and they have to come back together and defeat it once and for all. First off, one things I want to mention outside of the spoiler section of this video is I want to mention the casting in this movie. Man, I felt like all the adult characters were like spot on with their kids' characters, and honestly, man, it looked like they just popped those kids into a time machine and then bam, that's what we got. It was very stellar, and kudos to the casting department because y'all did an excellent job. And on top of casting, I'm going to go ahead and read down the list of people in case you were completely unaware of what these people were called. Obviously, Jessica Chastain as Beverly, James McAvoy as Bill Hader as Richie, and then Isaiah Mustafa for Mike. Now, that is an awesome name. That is a very awesome name, and a very, most of these people are relatively, not as, obviously the star power is the first three I mentioned, but the whole group performed excellently, and I really loved all their performances. And then we have James Ranson as Eddie, Jay Ryan as Ben, and then Andy Bean as Stan. Like I said, man, all these characters they were just awesome. They were spectacular. I love the acting in this movie, and man, this movie, whenever it needed you to feel a certain emotion, it definitely delivered, and these characters were definitely on point with their performances. And like I was saying earlier, there is a 2 hour and 50-minute runtime for this movie. I was completely unaware that it was going to be this long. I thought it was going to be around the same time as the 2017 version, which I think was around 2 hour 15, 2 hour 20, but I was not expecting that extra half hour in it. Now, with the long runtime, it did kind of have little paces of, oh, it's kind of dragging, but overall, this movie, just like what I said about the 2017 version, I definitely think that this version outpaced the 90s version without a doubt. The 90s version, everyone says the second part is the hardest part to watch because it's just so boring. The adults aren't really that interesting, and I completely understand why. But this version, I really found myself, invested in these characters, invested in these performances, and it kept me involved. And it didn't, despite the small amount of drag time, this movie didn't feel like it was almost 3 hours. I'll be 100% real with you. You might feel differently, but I know that's how exactly I feel. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into spoilers. If you don't want anything spoiled for you in this movie, please, time code's right here. Scroll to that time, and that's when the spoiler section is going to be officially over. But you guys have been warned. 3, 2, 1. Man, there were some brutal kills in this movie. You may remember from the 2017 version the way the Georgie kill scene, where Pennywise just opens his mouth and then bam, just chomps on the motherfucker. There were at least three scenes where he performed similar style kills, and man, it was just brutal, man. You had like fucking blood squirting out like a water balloon, and It was brutal. It was very brutal. Top of the brutality and the kills, they did add a scene that was from the book that wasn't in the original 90s version, and it showed this gay couple and at the carnival in Derry, and they're beaten up by some, what do you say it? Homophobic gangbangers. There we go. They're not gangbangers, they're just stupid white fucks. But they're homophobic, so that's the important part. So they beat up I want to say, I hate to say the more feminine of the couple, but kind of the more feminine. He's the more flamboyant one out of the two. But they beat him up and they toss him in the river, and then he's struggling, and then Pennywise is by the shore reaching out a hand. He picks him up, and the boyfriend's down by the riverbed, and he's like, "What the fuck is going on?" And you just see Pennywise just get underneath his arm, into his chest, and it was just like, holy fuck, dude. It was a brutal kill. Man, I was not expecting this much brutality in this version, but I'm glad we got it. I'm very happy, and very satisfied. Main synopsis for this movie: Mike is still in Derry after 27 years, and he's noticing signs that it might be stirring again. So he reunites the Losers Club. Tries to get everyone involved and everyone back in so that they can defeat it once again for good this time. Now, with that being said, all the characters, there's some kind of confusion whenever you leave Derry. You forget things, and all these characters had to remember Pennywise and had to remember their childhood and all this stuff. And one of the main points was they had to receive a token from their past in order to fulfill this ritual to take out Pennywise for good. And you just see them reliving their past. Pretty much you could cut these scenes into stuff that was filmed in for the first one but didn't make it and all that stuff. But it was all really good. We got the kids back in flashbacks, and we get to see these tokens. Each character has their own thing. Bill, he winds up getting Georgie's boat. Bev, she ends up getting the card with the poem on it. Richie has a literal token for an arcade game. Eddie, his inhaler. Mike, a rock that was used in the fight against Bowers in the first one. And then Ben had a scrap of his yearbook with Beverly's signature on it. After they receive these tokens and they remember their past, they're ready to bring the fight to Pennywise. I'm not going to mention the Henry Bowers stuff, but he was in it. Honestly, I watched Jeremy John say this, and I feel completely accurate about it. Out of a 2 hour and 50-minute runtime, if you would have completely taken out this character from the movie, there wouldn't have been anything different except Eddie not getting stabbed in the face. Other than that, there would have been no difference in this movie. They're all bringing the fight to Pennywise down in his lair, the original spot where his meteor landed whenever he crash landed on Earth however long ago. Because yes, he is from a different universe, which ultimately he came from space, came crashing down. Now that doesn't exactly get explained in the book or in the movie, but it's the lore. it's the novel. But during this fight, Eddie does die. He does get fatally wounded by Pennywise. You see Richie's reaction, and you can tell Richie and their friendship was really something to him. And they even kind of hinted to a homosexual affection from Richie to Eddie, which I felt was kind of weird. But ultimately, the way that they kill Pennywise, I know it's similar to what they did in the book, but it was just so funny seeing it on the big screen, on how they just belittle and tell him he's a clown, he's nothing but a clown, yada yada yada. They just belittle him until he shrinks down so small and so weak that they just pull out his heart and crush it all together. That was just too funny to me. I mean, obviously there's some connections to the book because that's similar to how they defeated. I'm not exactly sure because I haven't read the book, but I've looked it up enough, and I've read how they defeated him in the book, which is completely different from the 90s version. '90s version got so much shit wrong. Oh yeah, they defeat Pennywise, and the place starts collapsing on itself. They have to leave Eddie's body behind, but the rest of the losers manage to escape, and they just watch the house on Niebolt just crumble away. Last thing I want to talk about in the spoiler section, Stanley. Obviously, if you watch the miniseries from 1990 or the book or anything, you know that Stanley kills himself after hearing that it has come back. Now, I don't know how accurate this is to the book, but I kind of liked what they did. You know, because Stanley, he ends up writing a letter before he kills himself, and sends it all to the losers. Pretty much saying that he was a liability. He knows that, you know, if he was there, he would have screwed it up and everyone would have died because of him. And so he completely removes himself from the situation in pretty much a sacrifice play. And it just seeing the emotion of James McAvoy reading that in the letter, I was like, oh man, that kind of makes his death mean something. I kind of like that. I don't know why, but it makes it more emotional for me, instead of he was, you know, just killing himself out of fear, and you know, instead he was killing himself to make he was sacrificing himself to make sure that his friends could win and not all get slaughtered. So welcome back to my spoiler-free part of the review, where I give my final thoughts and score out of 6 stars for It Chapter 2. So one of the things I want to address about It Chapter 2 is that some people are saying that it's obviously not as scary as the first movie, and it's not, as terrifying. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be about the group of kids coming back together 27 years later to defeat an evil that they thought that they defeated. It's a character movie. It's not meant to, scare the pants off you. It's meant to fill you with emotion and fill you with intensity. It's supposed to be a thriller. It's not strictly just horror. It's supposed to have you root for these characters to defeat this evil. That's similar to what the 90s version, the second half of the 90s version was. But the only problem about that was it was just so... I hate to say it because I love the original, but I never loved the second half of the original. It's kind of boring. I mean, I understand, even what I just said, I contradict myself. But It Chapter 2, it was much more entertaining, and it was much more... It pulled me in a lot more than the second half of the original. I even watched that tonight, the second half of the original, while at work, and I was just uninvested. I'll be 100% real with you. I'll be real. It's kind of hard to watch the original after watching the 2017 and 2019 version, but still, it's supposed to be the character and it's supposed to entertain, and that's what this movie did. And I'm very happy about it. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give it my rating. 5.5 out of 6. That might be too high for some of y'all. I'm not exactly sure what I gave the first one, but it was either a 5.5 or a 6. This movie was just really good in my opinion, and I hope you feel the same. Now, if you don't, comment down below. Tell me what you thought about this movie. Leave a like down below if you completely agree with me, or dislike down below if you completely disagree with me. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and definitely check out It Chapter 2 in theaters. You will not regret it unless you go to a midnight showing. But anyway, I've been Barnyard. I'll see you guys next time.